Is Portland, Oregon as walkable as they say it is? Well, in today's video, we're going to talk to you about 5 things that you need to be aware of about
the walkability of the city.
The walkability of the city, and we're getting after it right now.
If this is your first time to the channel and you want to know everything there is to know about living in the greater Portland metro area, then make sure you click that subscribe button, tap the notification bell, do a little dance, and then you will be the first to know about everything happening in our market.
I just love that do a little dance every time. Yes, just like Erica said, all of our contact information is listed below. So if you're making that move to Portland and you want to get on a phone call, text us, or hop on a Zoom, we love doing that with our community. So let us know how we can be of service to you. All right, so we're talking today about, is Portland walkable? And a lot of you guys call us, and that is one of your number one requests is, I want to be somewhere walkable is what we hear. So we're going to talk about it. Now, Condé Nast, which is a travel magazine company, has listed Portland as number 5 most walkable in all the land, or all of the U.S.
I'm going to disagree.
We're going to kind of disagree on it, and we're going to talk about why today. There are 5 things you kind of need to know about the walkability of Portland that is really key, especially since so many of you approach us about walkability. Now, yes, there are walkable towns and cities and neighborhoods and so forth, but there are some things you need to be aware of, and we're going to talk about what those things are.
All right, so number one thing that we're going to talk about right now is there's no sidewalks in a lot of these neighborhoods in Portland. And some of you, I mean, starting off, we can always say, what does walkable mean?
Yeah.
Bikeable mean? But, you know, out of the gates, most of these neighborhoods, are in twisty, turny roads, and they don't have sidewalks, especially if you're in the West Hills, both sides of Sylvan. And yet people still get out there, they still do their walking. You just have to be much more careful.
Yeah.
Because these roads are, you know, they're 20 miles an hour, they're neighborhood residential roads. But you know, Anne, from driving them when we go out to show property, man, you are going slow because it's twisty, it's turny, you can't see, there's trees.
Yeah.
So if that's something that's concerning to you or important in your version of walkability, then make sure that you're checking out the neighborhood, because, you know, so often we get people who want to be in Southwest Portland. Well, Southwest Portland doesn't have sidewalks.
Yeah.
And you're going to be walking on the road, and you're not going to have a lot of protection. A lot of times you don't even have a lot of like side of the road or
there's not a lot of buffer.
No, I mean, sometimes you've got like a little hillside or a house or something that's not going to prevent or not going to allow you to really jump off the road should something come your way.
Yeah.
So take that in mind when you're thinking about where you want to be and what your definition of walkability is. Maybe you're like, I don't need sidewalks. I'm super, you know, I'm good. I wear my high-vis, you know, vest and all, you know, I'm very aware. Then, okay, great. But sidewalks are not like in every neighborhood.
I think the thing about walkability that we should probably point out is walkability means you're close to things that you could walk to. Not necessarily like, here's a sidewalk that leads you all the way to the coffee shop.
Yeah.
And why we brought that up and why we realized it's important to bring this up is because we've had 2 people recently reach out to us from our community here on Portland Life that specifically wanted walkability, and they thought it was really bizarre that we didn't have a lot in the way of sidewalks. It's not to say we don't have sidewalks. Like, there are some areas and neighborhoods that have them, but in general, we just don't have that. And so it surprises people, I guess. We are used to it, but that was brought to our attention by a couple of people. And also, when I think walkability, I also think biking. You know, people like to bike, foot traffic of different sorts. And so also, like Erica pointed out, if you're riding a bike and you don't have a sidewalk, you really do have to be careful. We do have a lot of bikers in the city, whether it's like
many bikers.
Casual bikers, electric bikers, or even like the competitive ones. And it always shocks us that they're right on the side of the road with like no, you know, you obviously have to, as a, you know, a car driver, yield to them. But we just don't have a lot of like, here's your designated spot. So
everybody's sharing that road.
Everybody's sharing the road. So it might surprise you a little bit if you're expecting that walkability, but that is what is part of what makes Portland so eclectic is a lot of our neighborhoods are from all different eras of time, and they just didn't put in your typical sidewalk. You'll see more sidewalks in, you know, the last 30 years of housing or planned kind of neighborhoods, but in general, we just don't have a lot of them. Okay, another thing that always surprises people is just how hilly Portland is. So if you're walking and you don't like a lot of hills, so people oftentimes think of, I want a flattened neighborhood to walk in.
We are not flat.
We are not a flat city, okay?
No.
We are very hilly, very, steep.
Now, I will say if you're downtown Portland, we are flatter. Like the downtown city area is much flatter, especially on the east side. However, when you start pushing out even just a little bit, you have a hill to get into Portland from the west side. And we have homes all over that hill. It's a very desirable area because you got some gorgeous views.
Yeah.
But it is very hilly. And like we said previously, the roads are twisty and turny and low visibility. So keep that in mind. I mean, it's a great workout. You're going to build the booty and the quads when you're walking down the hills. But if you are somebody who's looking for something that's going to be a relatively flat, easy walk, then be very cognizant of what neighborhoods you're actually
Maybe we
looking
could call
for.
it hiking. It's a combination between walking and hiking. Like, what do you call that?
Well, I mean, hawking. We're hawking.
We just made this up on the fly, so you're welcome to use it.
In the West Hills, you've got Leif Erikson that goes through there. You've got the Wildwood Trails. So it is very intermixed. It's also one of the reasons why, people love to bike through there is it's hilly, especially people training for triathlons or biking events. I used to bike through the hills all the time, and the drivers get annoyed because there's no shoulder, there's no bike lane, but that's where people want to train. So, it's also where people want to walk and run.
It's like adventure walking.
It's adventure.
It's like a little bit rustic. It's not your typical, flat, whatever. But I mean, there are, like Erica said, like on the east side neighborhoods have a lot more flat terrain, although there are some over there that are walkable that are very hilly or have a lot of, graduation up and down to their to walking around and getting to and fro. But the reality is it's a little bit adventurous to get to things. And we're going to talk about some other things that are really important here coming up that you should be aware of about walkable areas.
Okay, so the next thing to think about is that while we have walkable areas, they're very small and they're condensed. And we are still very much suburbia. So unless you're right downtown Portland, if you're getting out at all, you're going to have a very small area that's walkable right around a little community center. Multnomah Village pops out into my mind when I think about that. Or, some of these other little neighborhoods, but for the most part, we are still very car dependent or bike dependent. It's going to be a mile plus that you're going to be walking to get to something, if you're even that accessible. And so, it definitely, these small areas tend to drive prices up.
And be dense.
And be very dense. So something to think about with that is that, you're going to have more noises just in general from the roads. You're going to have services like police and fire and those sirens going off in the middle of the night when they have to go out to a call or something like that. So, just another aspect to think about when you say, I want walkable. Well, do you want walkable all the time? Do you want walkable just at a coffee shop? Do you need all your amenities? Walkable, because that's going to determine, it's going to jack up your price, and it's going to also change the,
inventory.
Exactly.
And like Erica said, there's small little areas. Like when people tell us they want to be in walkable, we have to give them an idea. Like it's not all of Portland is walkable. There's areas, and they are very popular because of the walkability, being close to things. And that really changes maybe what kind of inventory you're going to see or get. And it may even, if it's not a high, after you've kind of assessed your needs, a lot of people we find they're like, okay, that's not as important to me as I thought.
Yeah.
Just based on the fact that they're going to be like, there's just only so many neighborhoods on the east side or the west side that have it. And by the way, we did a video about the 5 most walkable neighborhoods on the west side, because I think a lot of people assume the east side is the only walkable area, but we do have some neighborhoods to be aware of on the west side. But yeah, you just have to understand that it's not like all of Portland is ever so walkable. No. You just choose what kind of house you want and then you're out the door, going to the local coffee shop. So very important to realize.
And again, that's where what we just, mentioned with the hills kind of pops in. Well, maybe it's only, half or 3/4 of a mile, but it's all up a hill or down a hill. So, it changes how that actually reads.
All right, you've heard location, location, location. And when we talk about walkable neighborhoods in areas of Portland, whether you're in the suburbs or in the urban areas, it all comes down to, guess what? everyone wants to be as close as they can to these kind of amenities. Everyone has a fantasy of being close to walking out the door and walking the dog down to the local coffee shop, or going meet up with friends at a restaurant where you don't have to get in your car. But understand that the average sales price in those areas jumps substantially in price. Now, we were on the phone with a client who called us off of our channel, and we're explaining to him that at his budget, he was going to need to look into doing a townhome option. And that sometimes happens where you're kind of almost, even in a lot of cases, in an urban situation. And so a lot of times in those denser areas where you're close to walkability, you do have single family housing, you have townhomes, you have condos as options, but you're going to pay a premium to live in those neighborhoods.
Yeah.
So the good news is you buy in those neighborhoods, you hold and retain the value always, because we're not really making those kind of neighborhoods at all, you know, where it's so walkable. But on the flip side of it is a lot of people realize, wow, to get what I want, I'm going to have to go up a lot in price.
And something else to think about that is that a lot of these neighborhoods, you know, when you're so close to these businesses, especially in the evening when they become, you know, restaurants are getting busy, bars are getting busy,
Yep.
you're going to lose parking. So if on-street parking, which is very common in Portland, is your only option, then you could be facing some challenges if you want to have guests over, or if you just get home at that time of day. And even though a lot of them are permit parking situations, it doesn't mean that they're not going to do it. So we generally find that, you know, like a lot of the side streets end up very packed with cars.
Good point.
That are all going to these, you know, businesses that we want to support, and we love the idea of being close to. So just something else to think about when you're, you know, making that decision of where you want to be. All right, so we briefly touched on this last one earlier, but to really emphasize the fact that it's going to be louder. If you're a noise sensitive person, just know that if you want to live in these walkable areas, it's going to be louder. You've got people walking outside your property, you know, most hours of the day. You're going to have the services. You've probably got public transportation going through that area as well. So buses, you know, maybe it's close to a Max line or a trolley car.
Or even like main roadways. You know, so you might actually have more sound of traffic in the area.
People coming to these businesses to, you know, be patrons. And so, you know, just definitely something that you want to think about is what do you want the ambiance outside to be when you want to enjoy it? Are you okay if there's, you know, lots of noise and boisterousness and traffic? Then great, you know, but if you're like, well, I kind of want to be, you know, want it to be quiet, then you may want to consider being a little bit further away, a little bit more removed.
Yeah, and with that is also just that foot traffic, right? There's usually in walkable areas, everyone's walking.
Yeah.
And a lot of people choose not to have a car and they bike or they walk. So you are going to have a lot more, I guess, transient traffic, so to speak. A lot of people just kind of coming and going. So more people out and about than your just typical walkers. So definitely something to consider if that's the type of, like, you know, neighborhood you want to be in. Well, thanks for joining us as we explained what are the 5 things you needed to be aware of about the walkability of Portland that we feel is really important, that we feel like we have to kind of talk to everybody about when they go to, you know, look into buying in the Portland metro area and they specifically want to be in a walkable area. So hopefully you found value in it. Drop your comments below. We'd love to hear from them.
Yeah, what are your thoughts about walkability in Portland?
Yep. And we'll see you guys on the next video. Bye.
Bye.